for me, it wasn't about bravery. It was about survival. And I think it's a common misconception people have for like trans people that it's like a brave choice. I think for most trans people I've known, it's like the quote unquote choice I have is to like drive a car at 70 miles an hour into a wall or turn. And so I decided to turn.
I'm Sam McKenna, and you're listening to the Show Me You Know Me show, a deep dive on the impact of personal connection and empathy from the perspective of some of the world's most successful executives. Our guest today is Jess Szmajda, General Manager at Amazon Web Services. Hi, I can't believe I'm here today recording this podcast. After 5 years of everybody saying, Sam, you need a podcast, I finally caved, but I'm going to give massive thanks to Courtney Garcia and Paige Tills on our samsales team, who really were the magic behind the scenes and convincing me that I finally needed to do this. Also, Courtney's a podcast producer and teaches podcasting, so we're really lucky to have her on staff. Anyhow, here we are. I'm so excited because I've always been a podcast guest, but never a host. So this is a great chance for me to flex a whole new set of skills to get to be the question asker instead of the question answerer, I guess. But this also helps us expand on what Show Me You Know Me means. And it can also be so impactful to your career, your life, to really everything around you. So for anyone who doesn't know, let's talk about what Show Me You Know Me is. First of all, it's something we trademarked. It was actually our very first trademark, and we were so excited about it. But it's something that I've been talking about for, probably over a decade now. Show Me You Know Me is the art of understanding our buyers. That's really where it stemmed from. Do we know who they are? Do we know the challenges that they have? Do we know what their peers are going through? Do we know what's going on in their vertical, in their space, in their company? It's really the art of understanding not only who they are in their roles, but also understanding what challenges they have in their organization and how we can help them. But what I love about Show Me You Know Me is it goes so far beyond that. It's how we understand our existing clients. It's how we understand our employees. It's how we understand even the personal relationships that we have. It's the prep work that we do for interviews. It's how we engage with people in our neighborhoods or our communities. There are so many different places where Show Me You Know Me can be applied. And that's what I love about it. It's not just for one thing. It's for really every part of your life that surrounds you. So in this show, we're going to hear stories from some of the most inspiring and successful executives in the world about how those kinds of personalization efforts made a difference in their own careers. We're going to go beyond sales to fields like DEI, marketing, entrepreneurship, and we're going to be considering things like how Show Me You Know Me can be helpful in getting a job or a promotion in every industry and every function. Honestly, there's so many use cases for this approach. I'm thrilled to be hosting a show that looks at a simple, credible way that anyone can improve how they communicate and care for other people. That's what Show Me You Know Me is at its core. So that's that. Here we go. It's going to be a great first season and a really special first episode. Our guest today is Jess Szmajda, a GM at Amazon Web Services with over 30 years of experience in the industry. Her journey has taken her from the early days of the internet to leadership roles at companies like Optoro, where she served as the chief technology officer and helped build the company into a reverse logistics technology leader. And if you wonder what reverse logistics technology is, you're in for a treat. We're going to tell you a little bit more about it in this episode. On top of all that, Jess is a social justice crusader. She came out as transgender in 2017, right in the midst of her corporate ascent, and quickly learned how to navigate any microaggressions that came along with being a woman in the workplace. She shares her story publicly in the hopes that it will build understanding and trust and lead to a more equitable world. What I love most about this episode is not only digging into Jess's great stories, but talking about things that might be uncomfortable for others and shining such a positive light on things that might be challenging for others to not only understand, but even to possibly face in their own lives. Okay, so Jess, you've been in IT for over 30 years, which is so impressive. Tell us a little bit about how this started, though. I think this started even before you finished high school, right?
Yeah, I was always into computers. We didn't grow up with a lot. My dad was like a mail carrier. My mom like had a in-home daycare. But they had a college savings fund for me and my sisters growing up. And in the mid 80s, they decided that that college savings fund would be better spent on a computer. And it actually worked out being the right choice because I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I didn't do so great in college, but the computer stuff has done really well for me. So I don't know, I grew up with like, this black and white DOS computer, if anybody knows what that is. And I had to figure out how to make it work to get anything out of it. And it was next to the, the window unit air conditioner that we had. And in the hot Maryland summers, that was like the place to like be that I wasn't like dying, right? So it was good incentives to figure it out. So yeah, so I mean, I learned technology from a pretty early age, and later in middle school and early high school, I guess some neighbors found out that I knew what I was doing, and they were like, "Oh, can you help me with X? Can you help me with Y?" And I was like, "Sure." And my dad was like, "You should charge for that."
Wait, so you started a business doing this. You became the kid in the neighborhood that was like, hey, how do I set up my technology? How do I set up this keyboard? What was that like?
I mean, it was actually, kind of a good start for like, networking, you sell to who you know kind of a thing. And so, yeah, it was the people in my neighborhood who I ran into and, was just chatting about, oh, I helped, Bob with his computer. I can help you with yours too if you want. And yeah, I charged for it. It was like, I don't know, like $10 an hour or something like that.
Can you imagine though, $10 an hour? I remember my neighbors had a job where they worked for their dad's company for over the summer, and they made $10 an hour. And I was like, $10 an hour. Like you would leave at the end of the day having $80. This is amazing. It was such big money to us back then. The thing that I think about too is like after you had this and after you held this job, you moved on to college, and we tend to try not to let our guests brag too much, but we heard that you maybe ended up with a 1.0 GPA. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I went to the University of Maryland, and the first semester I got a 2 point something or other. It never really connected with me at the time. I wanted to do everything else. I was struggling with depression also, and I had a lot of other personal things going on, and so I just didn't go to class. I didn't really do anything. And then the second semester, I think I ended up with like a 0.1 something. So a zero was
Oh
definitely the first
man.
number. Yeah. So they actually, yeah, they were like, you should probably do something else.
What do you think didn't click about college for you?
My story was depression and kind of a mediocre school, high school. I went to Prince George's County Public Schools, which, in the 90s were not known for the quality of their education. It was a system designed to not produce success, I think, overall. So, I came out of high school not really knowing enough about math to take the math classes I was in at college, with self-taught computer science. And I was in computer science classes where they were kind of teaching me the basics, and I just was not engaged. The sort of like work ethic required in college wasn't something that I had been taught. And meanwhile, I was, deeply depressed. And, this is like something I learned much later in life is due to like not having transitioned and gender identity problems. But at the time, I was just in full avoidance mode. I dove into video games. I avoided my problems, and that's what led to college not clicking for me. I got a job in IT towards the end of my first year there at University of Maryland, and I went to Montgomery College for a semester after that to try to do a community college thing based on, my parents were like, you got to do college, right? But at that time I was doing desktop support. I was a network admin for a small company in Silver Spring outside of DC. I was getting paid, I think it was like 50,000 a year. And at that point I was like, wait, I can get paid and learn on the job as opposed to going to school and like fighting through this system that's not agreeing with me.
I think there's so much more to every person's story, right? And I think you're on the surface, right? If somebody's not listening to that, you're kind of that hero story of that person who dropped out of college, went on to fame and fortune, just like, I don't know, 15 or so other people have done in their lives. But I think it's interesting to think about everything that lies behind the surface, right? Everyone always says you never know what battles people are going through. And I think such interesting threads to think about and come back to a little bit later in our show. You worked for that company though, and this continued to lead your trajectory into the next things that really, really shaped your career. What was kind of the history there? Tell us about that.
So I've always been really naturally curious and about technology, and it's always clicked very easily for me. And so I ran a bunch of desktop systems, and there was like some Unix systems that I was running, and I was really excited about that stuff. And so then I had some friends who were at a local company called Digex. It was like a business class ISP and web hosting company. And they were like, well, you should come do the more exciting stuff here. This is where the opportunity is. And this was just before the dot-com bubble was really in full flight. And so I went over there, and everything was really exciting and hopping. And actually, when I joined, Digex had just split out into this company had bought like the ISP part of it. So I actually joined that part. And so that was Intermedia. I did DevOps stuff before anybody knew what that was back in the 90s. Intermedia got purchased by Allegiance Internet, and then Allegiance Internet got purchased by WorldCom, and then the dot-com bubble burst, and WorldCom like was trying to figure out what in the hell they bought. And they looked at me doing my job title at the time for other reasons was Chief Enterprise Architect. And they interviewed people around like, well, what does she do? And they're like, I don't know. She makes the servers go, I guess. And like, wasn't that systems administration? They're like, no, she doesn't do that. She does something else. And they weren't really able to explain it because nobody knew what DevOps was yet. And so I go into this meeting of the Bobs, literally from Office Space.
What would you say you do
And
here, Jess?
exactly. And that's exactly what they asked me. And I start telling them about Perl and Solaris and like server automation, and they're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And so I got laid off.
I was going to say this could be great job security because nobody knows what the hell you do, but they know it's important. So they just leave you alone, except it went in a different direction. But this led, right? In 2010, I think ultimately you founded your own company. And I will say, like, just listening to your journey, like you were part of mergers and acquisitions and buyouts and exits before those were really even a thing that, every LinkedIn guru that's not really a guru on LinkedIn talks about. Like you went through all of this really just cool, badass stuff that so many of us dream about going through. And then you said, screw it, I'm going to start my own company. That was 2010. What happened there?
Well, I mean, the layoff was like that set up for this because like I had to go do my own consulting. Like, so I started a business at that point in the early 2000s doing like PHP consulting and then joined a group of consultants, worked for some other companies. And then I was in Massachusetts during that early 2000s time. I moved back to the DC area in like 2008 and I started attending meetups. And so I was at this Ruby meetup and I was talking to people and I met these guys who had started a storefront down in Georgetown where you could bring stuff to them and they'd sell it for you on eBay. They're like, we have this thing where we're finding all this inventory coming from businesses, but we don't know what to do with it. And so they'd pulled on that thread for a while and they'd recognized that businesses had this problem of overstock and returned goods and they didn't have a great outlet for it. And so these guys, Adam and Toby, had found out that there was an opportunity and they had this vision for a technology product that would help businesses solve that in a more automated way, in a more scalable way. But they didn't have that technology skill. Adam was coming to the Ruby meetup to try to meet up with technology potential co-founders, and they told me about the problem. Things made sense. Eventually, I joined them, and we co-founded Optoro. We grew that from just a few of us to 500-600 people, I guess, in corporate, and a lot of people working in the warehouse. And it's servicing top retailers like Best Buy and Staples and Home Depot.
For those of you who've seen 40-Year-Old Virgin, it's literally the eBay store that she runs, right? And you got this through networking. How did that kind of relationship start? I mean, it started at the meetup, but did you approach them? Did they approach you? Did you stay in touch and follow through afterwards? What happened?
I would just go to these meetups and just
Talk.
talk to everybody. Yeah. And listen a lot to people's stories. I mean, that's, I think, a superpower that some of the extroverts, I think most extroverts get this, that you have to listen to be able to engage, but it's a subtle thing. Like I think people think of extroverts as like, oh, I'm just going to go and be loud, right? No, no, it's like, I'm going to go connect with people.
The networking thing is the same for me. I'm an extrovert, but I'm just like you said earlier, naturally curious. I have a friend who warns people before they meet me and they say she's going to hit you with a firing range of questions. Don't be alarmed. She's just curious. And it's true though. I want to know your stories, your past. I want to know everything. I'm curious though, when you think about this role, right? As you guys scale the company, you bring on all these people, probably had to teach you a lot about sales too, how to make a pitch, how to connect with your buyers. And you were selling to engineers. What did that teach you about sales? What did you learn about how to make a pitch and actually connect with the right person? Maybe not the engineer in the end.
Yeah, engineers were part of the sort of decision-making group, I think, for a lot of this, because we were selling warehouse technology and technology to help our customers, well, first value their goods, move it to the right channel, deal with it physically, report on it. Initially, early days, we were just trying to sell to like the warehouse manager. We tried selling to like various sort of like general management positions in the organization. And anyway, it never really clicked until we got to the CFO. And the CFO is much more like, oh, well, I've just sort of written off all of this goods on the balance sheet, but you're telling me that I don't have to write off as much as I have to write off. I get to look like a winner at that point. And so they made a good first champion. But that was only our first champion. We had to then go, like, say, convince eventually the warehouse team, like, oh no, we're gonna replace your tools that you're very familiar with different tools. And we had to talk to the IT team to say, like, oh yeah, this was going to be secure and connect with your different systems and integrate. And we had to talk to the general managers eventually to say, yeah, this is actually something that's going to support your forward line and not just like undercut it. And so it was a really super multifaceted sale. And yeah, me going into this, like I'm just an engineer. I didn't know any of that.
I think two really important points of what you said. Number one, figuring out who our actual buyer persona is seems like an easy thing, but it can really be tough, right? So you build and design something that might be helpful to the engineers, but at the end of the day, they don't care about it. And so you keep going through those different personas and you're like, okay, how can we make a difference? How can we find our so what of our value proposition and for who it matters to the most?
Yeah, I didn't actually learn that until I worked at Axios. And Axios, I don't know if you've ever read any of their reporting, but why it matters is one of like the very first things in basically every bit of article there. And so at Aptoro, before I'd gone to Axios, we were just like, well, it's not clicking. We got to talk to somebody else. Or what's their value prop that they're going to sell back to their company, internally? How are they going to look like a winner inside? How are they going to be like the champion that makes a big difference? And yeah, having that so what framework or the why it matters thing, I think would have cut through a lot of that because then now at Amazon I use that like, why are we doing this? Why does it matter? And like if we can't express that, that's a problem we have to be able to like dive into and unpack because otherwise like nobody knows the reason for their actions. Like my engineers like are working on this stuff. They're like, well, you told me to work on this. No, you're an owner. Like ownership is one of our leadership principles. You need to understand why this matters. Like you need to be able to connect the dots to what value this is going to drive for the customer, or else we shouldn't be doing it.
You spent some time at Axios as well. What was that journey like? Also through networking, exactly how you got there?
Yeah, that one wasn't quite as direct. When I was looking to do my next thing after Optoro, I just sort of put out to my network, that I was looking for stuff, and eventually somebody put me in touch with the founders at Axios, and so it was like another step removed, but the same kind of thing.
This role at Axios led to what I think is probably one of your crowning achievements, right? Just an incredible thing that you've done in your career and becoming the first trans woman to be named as CTO and the first female CTO of a major media organization. That must have been so great, especially the day that it happened, just kind of reflecting on where you were, how you got here, et cetera.
When they talked about telling the story and like making like putting out a PR around it and stuff, I was like, wait, what? You care? Because to me, I don't know. I was just like, this is an organization that where, my skills are going to help them grow. We share a similar value set. We share a similar way of solving problems. And it made sense. And then, suddenly they're like, oh, well, we want to, publish this story and it's going to be in Vanity Fair. And I'm like, wait, what?
What was the reception like after that piece came out, after the press releases came out?
That sort of reticence to talk about it is interesting. Like I've always struggled with managing up. And I think the problem is that I don't know, I'm doing stuff and I don't think it's that interesting or I don't think it's that exciting or that novel sometimes. And so I just don't talk about it. I'm like, yeah, I did the thing, sure, whatever.
You were assigned the male gender at birth, but you came out as trans in 2017. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about bravery when it comes to this. I think for me, it wasn't about bravery, it was about survival. And I think that's a common misconception people have for like trans people that it's like a brave choice. I think for most trans people I've known, it's like the quote unquote choice I have is to like drive a car at 70 miles an hour into a wall or turn. And so I decided to turn. There's a lot of reasons that sort of made me finally face what I'd been running from since childhood. And eventually, when I faced it, I went to therapy. Like the first time was like, what the hell am I doing? This is stupid. Why am I here? The second time was like, oh, why do I have to deal with this curse? Why can't this just be somebody else? And the third time was like, okay, fine. I guess like this is me. I'm gonna have to just deal with it. And I have to swerve the car. I can't just keep going how I'm going, right? So yeah, I came out while I was CTO at Optoro. Had a great, reception there. I think everybody's really supportive, but they still saw me as I was before. They were like, "Hey, dude, how you doing, man?" In addition to like that, hey dude, hey bro kind of stuff, they're also started to treat me differently. So I guess about 6 months into me being myself at work, people started to see me as I actually am because they started to talk over me in meetings, or they started to like not take me as seriously as they used to. Like I would put out these like, architecture plans from time to time, and before transition, they'd just be like, maybe, some questions about it, a little bit of pressure testing, but yeah, mostly, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. After transition, it's like, well, I don't know. Are you sure that's the right thing to do? Or, gosh, did we think about something else? Or, like, I really want to get more data on this, was much more the common answer. And that's been true for now my entire career as a woman in tech. It's just like stuff that was easy for me before is now questioned or looked at twice or three times. Like I'm still the same, competent engineer. I still have the same decision-making capability, but suddenly now it's scrutinized like 3 and 4 times more. It's a challenge I think that our industry is starting to deal with, but we have a long road.
You mentioned depression quite a few times at the start of our episode. And I think we have such a positive focus on acknowledging mental health these days and thinking about how we find more balance in our lives and saying it's okay to not be okay. Things like that, where I think we just didn't have that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? How has that played a role in either you as a leader, you navigating your life? What's a lesson or two maybe somebody can take away from your experience and how you found silver linings or better footing as a result?
Having treated my depression now through transition, and it's a huge unlock on my ability to get things done. Like instead of having to struggle constantly to focus or to even get out of bed and make myself do the next thing, it's like now it's like, oh yeah, I want to do that thing. It's just, it makes so much more sense. And so my ability to contribute to our world, I think, has just been unlocked incredibly. I also find that acknowledging that I have had this struggle and still struggle from time to time, it's like a cheat code, I think, for connecting with people because it's so deeply authentic. A lot of people struggle with all kinds of different things, be it depression or anxiety or like really anything else in life. Like there's a lot of stuff that we don't always want to share with everybody else because we think that it gets messy or dirty or a downer, I think. But the truth is that we're all human and we all struggle with things. And so I think admitting that and owning it and talking about how I've worked through it is it's just an incredible power play in a lot of ways.
Was there a catalyst in your life where you figured out that depression was what you had? It wasn't just, you were in a bad mood or you were having a bad run or it was a phase.
Yes. So I was never like that sort of like stereotypically like couldn't get out of bed depressed. Long story, but I eventually played this game called Depression Quest, which is just a little web game where you like click through and you make some choices, almost like a choose your own adventure book. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, that's me. I'm depressed. What the hell? Like this explains so much.
It's incredible. As a general manager at AWS, how did you end up here?
Yeah, well, it was networking. I was attending this DC area CTO meetup and just being gregarious, being engaged, getting to know people. And I put it out there when the time was right that I was looking for my next thing. And somebody who was part of the group thought that I knew what I was talking about, I guess. She and I chatted a while about the opportunity and it made sense. But she's the one who got me to join.
You practice what we preach every day, which is show me you know me. And I'd love to understand, how does that fit in to your role at Amazon?
Yeah, so as a general manager, I interact with customers a lot. It's always just seemed really obvious to me that if I'm going to talk to somebody about how they use my product, I better understand their business. Like everybody needs a firewall, but why? And what's problems are they trying to solve? Like fundamentally, are they getting value out of it? Like, do they care more about, I don't know, like compliance, or do they care about like advanced state actor threats, or do they care about like, I don't know, specific protocols that they might be running? Like, I need to know their business. I need to know who I'm talking to, their position in their business, to be able to connect what I'm going to say with them in a way that makes sense. Because like otherwise, often what I'm talking about is like super abstract, super like hard to understand, super hard to get. Another thing that I do here at Amazon is I help organize one of our biggest customer meetings every year with like some of our top customers leaders, and my role is to connect people with each other, and we're trying to understand like, are we going to deliver the results that they need to thrive on AWS?
Okay, last question. Something I'm asking everybody. If a person wanted to get a meeting with you, maybe it's to sell you something, maybe it's hoping for a mentor, to have you as a mentor or for promotion, whatever it may be, what do they need to do?
I mean, networking is the most obvious one. It's, working through somebody who I trust, who's already doing that filtering work for me. I think without that, it's context. Like if I'm at an event, making sure that you're at the event for the reasons that I'm there, I think helps a lot. If you're just there, like plenty of people would come to those Ruby events and just try to sell people. And I'm like, what? I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk about Ruby here? Certainly, if you're here to engage with me about Ruby and talk about that and then make a connection through that, okay, cool. That makes more sense.
Jess, can't thank you enough for being here with us today, for sharing your story from way into high school all the way to what's happening now, and just what a trajectory, both professionally and personally. So thank you for sharing your time with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What a journey and inspiration. Some things I learned from Jess today that I'd really like to point out. First, the value of authenticity cannot be overstated. Jess continually stayed true to her core, even when it meant dropping out of school or transitioning or even stepping into challenging roles. No matter what move she made, she remained committed to being who she was, and that kind of transparency and honesty usually gets rewarded. A lot of people say one move or decision can change everything. That's true, but it can also be the opposite. One fail or one alternative route does not have to dictate your whole life story. Maybe you want to go to college, or maybe you don't. Perhaps your goal is to graduate with a high GPA and secure a good internship, or maybe you already have an amazing skill set that you want to exploit. Regardless, it's okay to take risks and change your mind. It's okay to do something unusual. You may not always be comfortable where you are, but that doesn't mean you're not going anywhere. It doesn't mean you can't be as successful as the ones who took that traditional path. Finally, put yourself out there. Sometimes it feels like a risk, and sometimes it could be really challenging to saddle up to the end of that diving board and jump off the high dive, but it's often pivotal to success. That's what Show Me You Know Me is all about. Now, before we go, on each episode, we're going to close out with a segment called Sam Spills, which could be full of ordinary questions or it could be spicy ones. We'll see. We'll see what you guys send in. But on every episode, I'll spend a few minutes answering your questions, whether they're related to sales, LinkedIn, Show Me You Know Me, or even if you want to hear about my little boy, Alex. No? No one? Crickets? Got it. Well, if you have questions, go ahead and send them in. And before we close out, let's get to a few right now. First one is from Sarah in Baltimore, Maryland. She asks, how do you graciously acknowledge when a prospect reveals they decided to move forward with another solution? Ugh. Hopefully you can feel my groan and hesitation there, Sarah. First of all, we've all been there, so don't worry, you're in good company. Two, I think this is an amazing opportunity for you to show great character and to build a long-term relationship. So one of the things that we are known for at Sam Sales is the art of the gracious loser. And what does that mean? So think about when you were growing up, right? And we were told to be good sports even when we lost the game. It's no different here. So when you do lose an opportunity and it goes to somebody else, just think about this. What can I do now to set myself up for success? Not only to be a class act in losing, but also to think about what if this deal, the person they end up working with, doesn't go forward? And what if this person changes jobs in 6 months and goes somewhere else? What can I do to build a better bridge today? So, in the spirit of being a gracious loser, what I would tell you is to send a handwritten thank you note. Yes, that means stationery and stamps and getting their address, but imagine the feeling that they're going to have when they get a note from the person who lost the deal and probably nothing from the person who won the deal. Now, your note doesn't have to be complicated, but it can say something simple like this. Hi, Sarah. Simply wanted to send you a note to say thank you so much for the opportunity we had to potentially earn your business. While we, of course, wish it had gone differently, we wish you nothing but the best, and we are always here as a resource to you if you ever have anything we can do to support you. Good luck ahead. Please stay in touch. Cheers. Something like that, right? And what that now means is you've done the class act of sending them that note. You can stay in touch. You can check in and see how things are going. And more importantly, you can track them as they change jobs, get promoted, or move throughout the organization to see if you can help them in the future. Great question. Let's do one more. This is from Eric in Boston, Massachusetts. Can you give me a script for negotiating salary? It's so daunting. Oh my goodness. Raise your hand. I can't see you guys, but raise your hand if you love to negotiate salary. It's just my hand in the air. All right, got it. The thing about this, right, is I think this can be a daunting question, just as you said, but I think it doesn't have to be that difficult. So here's a typical scenario we get in, right? We're interviewing for the job, things are going great, and then the person says, hey, what base salary are you looking for? And you're like, I don't know. How much are you willing to spend? Right? That's typically my answer. But what you want to think about is how you can frame this in a way, right, that not only uses logic, but puts the onus back on them. Now, negotiation tactics, by the way, would tell you to come out swinging with exactly what you want. But what if I say, I want $80,000 and they were like, we were willing to pay 90. Great. Now we save 10 grand. So what I would tell you is this. I would say something like, the base salary is a little irrelevant to me. And I only say that because it's the total package that matters most. So what I want to think about, right, is what's the base salary? What's the bonus like? Is there a signing bonus, an annual bonus? Is there commission involved? What are the benefits like? Is there a 401k match? I really need to understand what the full package is because the base salary alone is meaningless if I don't know the other parts. So I need to consider the full number there. When you say something like that, right, you're pushing back and not giving a specific number, but you're also putting the onus on them to come back to you with what that package looks like. The other thing that I love, you're going to notice that I said signing bonus, annual bonus, commission, 401k match. You're signaling to them that that's what you expect and that that's what they need to come to the table with. And that's a wrap. The very first episode of the Show Me You Know Me show is officially fini. Big thanks to Jess Szmajda for taking time to share her story and for being an incredible advocate and supporter of equality. I'd once again like to thank Courtney Garcia, our producer of the show, and Paige Tills. And I want to thank our growing audience who continues to support samsales across all the spaces and places we like to hang. Our theme music is a song called All at Sea by the artist Zediel. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and if you want to stay up to date on all events and resources coming from samsales, our newsletter is a great resource for that as well. You can find links in the show notes on this episode. That is all. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you again soon.